Beth, what else are we going to reimagine today?
Well, Tom, we've lived through an explosion of collaborative technologies and have learned a lot about how to navigate them. What are the innovations that are changing the way we communicate and work? How do we go to market and sustain relationships in an all virtual world? How do we build a sustainable culture for our employees? Use the Q&A to ask any questions that you may have ongoing. This session coming up and our esteemed panelists have some exciting answers. I'm delighted to hand off to Ken Hein, U.S. editor at The Drum, who will moderate The World Beyond Zoom.
Thank you so much, Beth. It's great to be here. I have an A-list panel here today to talk about the world beyond Zoom, where we've all been living in day by day, minute by minute. I'm going to jump right in. With me today, I have Daniela Campari-Hahn, who is head of competitive intelligence at Kimberly-Clark. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Ken.
Welcome. We have Catherine Ragg, SVP, Human Resources at TriNet, which is a leading provider of payroll and health benefit services. There we go.
Hi, Ken. Hi, team. Thanks. Happy to be here with you today.
And we have Julie Rose, Chief Creative and Strategy Officer at MGM Creative, who helped put on this tremendous event today.
Hi, Ken.
So it's so nice to see you. So let's jump right into it. Daniela, you just had a growth summit and you labeled it as one of your most successful ever. How could that be? How could that be, doing it all virtually? Please explain.
It's a great question, Ken. We're still asking ourselves the same question. When we started, we're like, oh God, how are we going to keep people engaged? We've got some great messages to give. It couldn't be further from the truth, and so many things changed for us. Historically, we could normally only get about 200 people there. We had 800. Normally we would have a handful of speakers. We had 90 from all over the world, all functions. And I think one of the biggest things for us at the end, when we did the survey, was the feedback we got was that people felt more involved, more engaged, and actually felt they'd met more people than they would do in a normal face-to-face conference. But there were some things that we had to do very, very differently. We had to consider the medium that we were working with, and we had to make sure that we didn't just try to take, what was a on stage set of presentations and try to turn it into messaging over Zoom. So we had to do a lot of things very differently.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, Julie, when you're putting together these types of events, what kind of challenges do you come up against, and how have you counseled companies to kind of invest beyond Zoom for clients like Kimberly-Clark?
Yeah, exactly. I was lucky enough to work directly with Daniela to create that Growth Summit, and some of the challenges that we came up against were budget and time and effort. And that has a lot to do with the fact that everyone thinks that it is Teams or Zoom or whatever they're used to working on, and they don't understand that we're coming to them with different technology that takes time, effort, and budget to make it different, to actually go beyond Zoom. And the other challenge is that everyone wants to just stand on stage with their PowerPoint and do their usual slide deck and then sit down. And we're really pushing people beyond the technology. We're pushing people to do things like we're doing right now, have real conversations and engage the audience in those conversations. So 3 big challenges, but I think that Danielle would agree with me that even though there was a lot of pushback, in the case of Kimberly-Clark, at the end, everyone was like, oh, thank you for pushing us through those challenges because it was worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I could only imagine, trying to convince somebody to not use their PowerPoint. I think there's an attachment. It's like a crutch for some, so, kudos for achieving that. So, Catherine, TriNet also just had a successful virtual forum. What were some of your biggest learnings, when you did it?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question, Ken. So we hosted TriNet People Force, which was a 3-day virtual forum that was to provide SMBs throughout the U.S. with insights and leadership and recommendations for the challenges facing the small business community in this environment. And as Daniela said, participation was definitely higher than it would have been if it was in person, given the event was virtual. And I would agree, the overall sentiment of the event in general was it was much more intimate. It created personal connections with the panelists. And what was really amazing is that folks were able to attend from all different geographies, which saved companies expense and time. We were able to attract various levels of talent, so those that are earlier in career, as well as those to established executive CEOs, and so it felt like a much more inclusive event versus what it might have looked like if it was in person. And we were also able to feature leaders, public officials, and others that wouldn't have been able to join if the event was in person. So overall, it was really great and definitely something that I believe we will do again in a virtual format.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing because a lot of these events, as we know, it's very senior people flying somewhere, and often these up and coming stars don't get a chance to hear this really important information and learn and be inspired. So it's pretty cool.
And that makes me think about something. We were able to go to much lower levels in the organization, but we were also able to give them a chance and a platform because we brought them in to do the speaking. We brought them in to actually share their work. And so, we brought the regions and the business units, and we actually brought real life examples for people to see. But again, we had a responsibility to these younger these people that were perhaps not as well known, to make sure that they looked good, that they sounded good, and that they turned up well. And that takes time, planning, and effort.
Yeah, I'm sure it was an amazing experience for them. So, Daniela, when we spoke earlier, you made a really good point. You said something to the effect that Zoom isn't necessarily a substitute, for the live stuff and all the stuff we're used to. It's something else. So, can you share with the audience, what you meant with that?
Yeah, I think for those of us that are old enough to remember when we moved from traditional creative to digital creative and then to mobile, I think we all sort of tried to just take what we had and moved it until we finally realized, you got to create for the medium that you are using. And it's exactly the same here. We had to create, it's almost like mobile first. We had to create the content and the way it was presented for this medium. We had to give it the time and effort. I explained it's almost like making an ad. It takes us like 2-3 days to produce like 20 seconds. That's what it takes to do this right. And another example is, I think one of the most expensive forms of advertising is actually email, because people think it's free, they think it's cheap, but you can be unsubscribed in a nanosecond and you have lost that customer forever. And I think people tend to treat Zoom the same way. Well, it's just a meeting, we'll just get on, and it'll be, no, there's so much of an opportunity to do it differently, to do it better, and to take advantage of what's available. But you really do need to work with a company. I just don't think you can do it on your own after the event. And I don't want to do an ad for Julie and the team, but this is something you need help with. You really do. I don't think you can do it on your own.
So we'll take it to Julie. I mean, when you're counseling your clients again, when you're trying to take them beyond Zoom and beyond the sort of the basics of what we've been doing, why is this important? Why is it important to take them to this sort of next level when it comes to these presentations and these things that you're doing for your staff to keep everyone engaged and with your clients?
Well, so what MJM does is designs and builds corporate meetings. And so we've been doing this in person. We've been doing this virtually, actually, for decades. And it's because it's so critical. It's so important to gather your team. They need a morale boost. They need to be motivated. They need to learn. There's a lot that goes on. And so when folks thought, oh gosh, COVID happened, we should stop meeting, we really had to talk to a lot of people about how it's more important now than ever. It's more important to get your people together, and it's more important to connect. I think that folks are looking for humanity. They're looking to see their leaders in their home settings. They're looking to see their leaders in interview settings where they're really engaged and giving authentic answers. So there are a lot of ways that that we can help companies gather their people and then give them an experience where they feel connected to the company, to the mission, to their colleagues, to their leaders. And it's just a critical thing to do. So it's fun to help. And Danielle, I would never unsubscribe you or Kleenex. So we're clear.
I mean, to that point, when we were speaking earlier, somebody said that it was actually interesting for the junior folks to see their leadership more relaxed. Like they kind of pivoted away from the CEOs being the big presentations, and that the junior people got to get elevated. And I think that's pretty amazing. What are some of the other things that, Catherine, that you've done, to when you're doing these presentations for your staff, and what are some other ways to keep employees engaged in a way that maybe they hadn't been in the past, or new opportunities to do so?
Yeah, thanks. So we all know communication's key. We're talking about it now, but I think it is being flexible on how we communicate and different frequencies and different mediums, right? Individuals in organizations have different preferences in the way they want their employers to engage with them. And so I do think we are creating those more personal connections that our employees are striving for, and thinking about new ways to bring people together so that they can get to know each other and have that personal connection with the corporation. And obviously COVID is the big shared experience we all have these days. But in terms of putting it into action, I think that utilizing meaningful ways that aren't always directly related to our day-to-day work. So whether it's, we're utilizing employee-led affinity groups or coffee talks that are, dealing with issues that used to be taboo, and now it's so important to bring them into the workplace so that you can educate and get folks to understand sort of how people are feeling, whether it's different things like social feeds on the intranet rather, or, other DIY contests. We've taken our all hands and we got our colleagues involved. So to the point earlier where, not only seeing executives in their home, but we did plays on music according to our mission and our values, and just showing how colleagues had talents that we didn't even know about throughout the organization. So we had folks singing and playing the guitar, the drums, or the piano and whatnot, just to bring some of that personal connection to our day-to-day life, that I think was really, really helpful in creating, I guess I would say, shortening the distance that we all feel every day. We've even done things like no video Fridays so that you just don't have to be on screen, or, no meeting days. That was a huge one that went really, really well because everybody's been sitting in back-to-back meetings all the time. So being able to kind of just have a no meeting day, which obviously you can't do all the time, but allowing yourself from a mental health perspective just to get down and do your work and to think, to plan, and or to pick up the phone and connect with somebody that you don't ordinarily connect with on Zoom meetings all the time. So I think all of these, I think the key is mixing it up, trying new things. And then I also think is being able to have resources for employees that they can pursue at their own leisure, right? Because not everybody likes to be fed things. They want to do it on their own time and their own pace.
Wow, there's a lot of great stuff there. Shortening the distance is a terrific way of looking at it. And I think all of us would like a no meeting day. So that definitely sounds like a benefit. But I think moving forward,
Sunday. We call that Sunday at our house. Okay.
Except for that
no,
one.
No, that's not true, Julie. We worked weekends. In 6 weeks we did. We did a little marathon.
Who am I kidding? I had 3 meetings last Sunday.
So it's interesting, I think there's been a lot of learnings. I think we can all admit that, and there's things that we thought, well, I wouldn't do that, and now we think, well, we have to do that. We have to do that moving forward. So Daniela, what are some of the things that you're going to take with you? Because eventually we're going to, go back to work in some capacity, and there will be events again, and I can't wait. I think most of us can't wait at this point. But what are some of the things that we've learned, doing stuff like this that we can take with us and be smarter and better for?
So I think it was something that Catherine mentioned. There was a leveling that happened. That distance didn't just physically get shorter, but the distance between the levels. And there's one thing when you're all on a call together, or just even a Zoom call. There's such a balancing. Because I'm sure we've all been in meetings where you've been the only person that's been on the phone or on the video, and there's a separate meeting going on. And if you're managing a meeting, no matter how hard you try to remember the people on the phone, it's so difficult to ensure you keep them involved and you make sure you listen to them. And I think one thing that's going to have to be important for us all is not to go back to this hybrid, because the experience is never the same for those people that are remote. And that's going to be critical, and it's going to be tough because there are those of us who are going to be desperate to get into a room together. But we're going to have to be really, really diligent about it to make sure that fairness, that leveling, that consistency, that experience is the same for everybody, because that is what's making these calls better, is the fact that everybody's a little square box, and that you can see everybody as well. So I think that's something that we're going to have to really be diligent about.
Yeah, it's interesting because somebody had just popped a question in that was basically, how do we stop humans from being humans and just wanting to revert back? And I think you touched upon that. But, Julie, in many ways, I know your business has been kind of ready for this sort of things, but how has it changed, and moving forward, how do you see what you do being just a little bit different based on this, let's call it, unique experience that we're all going through at the moment?
Well, part of the reason, sorry, I've got to fly here. Part of the reason that we were ready is because years ago, we developed this for pharmaceutical companies who could not afford to have their sales reps be out of the field for training. And then we started to creep it into everyone's meetings because it is a great leveler, and it allows us to be so much more flexible and creative. And I think that that's what we'll take with us. There's no longer, when someone says we have to get everyone together, there's no assumption that, okay, well, we have to book a hotel ballroom, right? I think it'll be socialized, that there are different ways to do it, even as we move into hybrid. I know you all, Daniela and Catherine, you were just talking about hybrid more for, in-person, work meetings, but for a big corporate meeting, we have to look at that too. We need to be able to figure out, there are always people that aren't going to be okay traveling, not just to the office, but to Las Vegas, going forward here. And I think this is going to open it up. So that's the big thing, is that hybrid solution that really does include everyone. And like you guys said, it's going to help us be able to make the meeting that much better because we can bring everyone in. And so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah. I think everybody can agree that there actually, amid all of the negativity and the things that happen, there has been some positive stuff. So, Catherine, when we go back to whatever that may be, maybe it's the wrong word, how are you planning on keeping this positive momentum, going forward?
Thank you. I think it's, it's celebrating some of the good. I think people are going to need a reason to go back, and they're just going to need a reason on some level, because I think generally speaking, folks have gotten somewhat comfortable working remotely. And so you've got to create a reason, or employers have to create that reason to bring that social interaction, or create a place where it's not just the tactical work, because you can get that done at home, right? So why do you go back to work? It's really for the social hub, it's for the innovation, the in-person connections, the culture. So we can do a lot of that through Zoom, and I think we've been effective. But I think as we go back, social distancing or different safety precautions for employees. But I think that we'll ultimately have so much more flexibility and collaboration, because it will be much more mission driven, or intentional, if you will. So, taking the positives and making sure that they're top of mind for your managers, your leaders, is going to be just something that you have to embed in your day-to-day life as a reminder. You guys have all spoken about, whether it's just the level of engagement that we've had when we're remote, or, equaling the playing field and what that means. So I think setting the example, being inclusive, leading with empathy and understanding, leading with intention, bringing your authentic self to work, and really understanding what your employees are going to need to be able to engage at the highest level. So meaning about work-life integration, it's no longer work-life balance. I know everybody's been working weekends and late nights and all of that, but it's really how do you balance load with the things that you need to do in your daily life. And I really don't believe there will be many roles that will go back 5 days a week. It's going to be very intentional on why you go to the office to get what you need. And I think that's sort of how we're gonna attack it and help support the partners that we work with.
Great. Would anybody like to add anything to that? I think there was a lot that was covered there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this genuine self, your true self, there's nothing more true than when your kids run behind you or the cat's jumping up or, I'm on my husband's laptop because mine wasn't working. We didn't make it work, literally. I think it's just wonderful because, you get to be who you are and people get to know you. I'm an extrovert. It's no surprise, and so people know me, an open book. But it's been wonderful for me to get to meet, my team's partners, and I think the compassion is critical. When this happened, the message that I gave is, please, we have to be compassionate. I don't know who thought it was a good idea for moms and dads to become teachers as well as fully employed. There's a reason we're not teachers. I have nothing but admiration for them. And, so I think the important thing is everybody's experience through COVID has been different. For me, it's been a positive one, for those people with younger kids. It's been tough, but also great because they're with their kids. And I think that's something we are all going to have to really pay attention to when we get back to, if we do go back to an office, is really remembering to understand that our people are all individuals. They have different needs. And figuring out what's right for them. One size definitely doesn't fit all. And as leaders, we better remember what we saw, what we heard, and make sure we bring that to the table.
I saw, but did not have time to read. There was an article that was literally about how to start training your pets for when you start leaving the house again. Home, Daniela. But I just went onto it and say, I feel like I've gotten to know clients in a completely different way that I never would have, because even if we did get them it was on a call, and now everyone's on video. And so when you're pitching creative or trying to guide someone into something really different, like not starting with a PowerPoint deck, back to what we were talking about, and you can actually look at each other and have that conversation, you develop a relationship and a trust that I don't think happened in the same way with just phone call after phone call. So as much as I don't like looking at myself on the screen every day, all day, it really has had a powerful impact on the work that we do.
Great. So I'm gonna ask one question from the audience. I did throw in one earlier, and then I'm going to ask everybody to offer one actionable insight that folks, watching at home should be thinking about. One new truth that they should be applying. So we're asked here, how our leaders think the virtual meetings are free? How do we convince them that they have to actually budget for these things? Which is, I think, a good question.
I can take that.
Can I take that one? I can
follow up.
You go for it.
Yeah, because we went through this together. But I think the biggest thing to explain to them is take the meeting that we had and that budget and just understand that the venue changed. The venue is now not the Ritz-Carlton. It is the interwebs. And I think that that's the biggest thing. All the planning goes into it, all the support, all the creative design, keynote speakers. That's all the same. What you don't have is F&B, unless you decide to send everybody a cheese plate. That's fine. You don't have the same F&B. You don't have hotel rooms, but you still have the venue. And the venue, depending on what you're doing, but if you're going beyond Zoom, it's quite a technical undertaking. We custom build sites to meet exactly what our clients need. Some people need breakouts, some people don't. Some people need a lot of networking interactive. So we're custom building that venue, if you will, and that's one way. But Daniela, I'm excited to hear your response.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell you the budget that they started with. Of course, everybody thought this was going to be free, but I mean, to Julie's point, it's like I mean, the creative element of this, of making sure that it came off. I mean, we were pretty much produced a TV program, you know, because you got to keep people engaged. We kept them engaged for 12 hours. 4 hours for 3 days. And I had one senior exec say to me, you know, I said, how did it go? He said, Daniela, you ruined my plans. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I had planned to like multitask and I could not keep my eyes off the screen. I was desperate to hear what was coming. That takes time and it takes money. You know, you get what you pay for. But trust me, I was like, when I went, fortunately, we had a phenomenal global growth leader. But I know that it would have been a much tougher much tougher sale if it hadn't been someone that was used to knowing that, you know, digital advertising doesn't come free. You know, so it's, you really, you got to invest.
Great. All right, real quick, one key point for everybody at home. Daniela, some people to keep in mind.
Plan. People's time is important. Don't think it's just another meeting. Put the time in.
Great. Julie?
I'm going to say be genuine and authentic, and so that other people really feel like they can engage in that authenticity and be genuine themselves.
Perfect. And Catherine?
And I'm going to add to Julie's and say being inclusive. And I think it's so important to make sure that we're including everybody along in the journey. And, you know, I would say know what you know. Keep asking questions. Folks are going through, to what you heard today, Daniela and everyone talking about the different challenges people have. Make sure you understand sort of where everybody is so that you can actually meet them where they are to help them be productive and engaged as best as possible.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for this conversation. I certainly learned some stuff. I hope the folks you know, at home learned a few things. I'm sure they did. And with that, I am going to now hand it back to Tom. So take it away, Tom.